everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm back with a brand new video, this time doing a kind of build tutorial slash tips and tricks video. It's been one that's been highly requested on my channel, and after lots of procrastinating I decided to finally sit down and get it done. There are lots of informative guides out there on YouTube about the whole build process in The Sims 4 that are absolutely brilliant. So I'm not entirely sure what I could possibly add to this video that could be any different, but I can certainly talk you through my thought process and give you kind of hints and tips and tricks along the way to show you what it is and what I do to get to the final result. So the first thing I do is I enter the Move Objects cheat. Now firstly I'm going to show you what it is that Move Objects does. So if you have a sofa and then you select another sofa, you'll notice that when you come to place them closer together, you literally can't. It won't allow you to. It goes so far before it says it can't intersect other objects. Now what the Move Objects cheat does is allows you to layer objects closer together, and they're literally any object. So in order to enter the Move Objects cheat, you press Ctrl-Shift-C and you type in bb.moveObjects space on and then enter. And it will tell you that Move Objects cheat is on. And then to close the console, you press Ctrl-Shift-C again. And as you can see here, the objects can literally be layered on top of one another. So I always use Move Objects. I think it's a fantastic cheat. It allows you to build really kind of complex designs when it comes to building, and it helps a lot. So I'm also going to talk you through a few of the controls along the way as well that I find quite handy to use. So now we've got the Move Objects cheat in place, the next thing to think about is inspiration. Now I often get asked what my inspiration is and where I get my inspiration from. I literally get my inspiration from everywhere, from real life to Google, Pinterest. Everywhere you look, you're never far away from some sort of home or park. So the first thing that I do when I come to build is I take the inspiration that I have, and that may be that I want to build a Spanish villa, or it might be that I want to do a Victorian house, and in my mind I've got some idea of what it is that I'd like to build. The next thing is to decide roughly what sort of windows and doors you'd like to use. Now not so much windows, but I would say especially doors, because when I come to do my build, I always map out where the front door is going to be first and make sure that I've left enough room either side of the door so that it doesn't look out of place. So for instance, I'm going to use the Seasons windows and doors today because the Seasons windows are really versatile. They come in sort of all different shapes and sizes, which make them really easy to use. So I know that the Seasons door is 3 spaces wide and that I need to leave space either side. So now we have an idea of roughly what windows and doors we want to use. We need to come over to the wall building tool, which is just down here. It's the highlighted purple wall. And you've got a selection of different tools, from foundations to basement tools, all the way through to walls and fencing tools. Now these are your main 3 wall building items here, and you can build just single walls using this one. You can build complete rooms using this one, or we have this kind of custom room tool which allows you to sort of dot to dot map out a particular room just like that. Now everybody builds in different ways. There's no right or wrong way to do it. I see quite a lot of people use this particular one, and they like to sort of map out the floor, and they'll go round and they'll come up with some sort of shape, and then finally they'll do it that way. But personally for me, I like to use the room tool. I don't know why. I don't know if I've always done this either. I just find it so much easier, and you'll see me use it all the time. But ultimately, no matter how you build, you can still manipulate the shapes of rooms afterwards. So I want to make sure that we're not going to build anything too big either, so we'll just make it a little bit smaller. And this is going to be the room that my front door's on. So I'm going to go and select my front door. We'll choose white, and as you can see here, It's 3 spaces wide and I've left a little bit of space either side. Now I'm quite a symmetrical builder, so I'm not really a fan of seeing doors like this unless it goes, sometimes it can work depending on the style of build that you're building, but a lot of the time I like to leave things, you know, make them nice and central. So one of the next handy tricks I've got, which can save a lot of time, is the duplication tool, the copy tool. So when you select your room, you'll notice that you get a couple of different options. Now this will shorten the walls or make them higher. So this is the highest setting. A lot of the time I build with mine on medium. So you'll notice that when the walls are on really high, over on the edge trims, you're able to apply these really, really big chunky ones. But as you lower the walls down, you'll notice that they start to grey out. So we can't use those ones anymore. And also they'll grey out further when you select the short wall. Now a lot of the time I do like to add an exterior trim onto the build, so I tend to go for medium because I never really use these chunky ones. Them ones that are probably best for more of a sort of palace build or a castle, but you can use it in any way you like, but that's what that one's for. Now this one here will allow you to move the room wherever you like. This one will rotate it, but this one duplicates it. To save a lot of time, I tend to duplicate what certain rooms that I'm building. I certainly use it when I'm doing turrets. So for instance, if I added a turret onto the side of this house here, and I know that this turret's going to be a couple of floors up, I'll literally just duplicate it. Duplicate again, go to the next floor and place it down like so. And it just saves you a lot of time instead of going around and obviously building them one by one. So we'll get rid of that. We're going to duplicate this one and make a second floor. Obviously it duplicates everything that's on it. So if you've got windows and things like that, obviously everything will be copied. So we'll get rid of this door. So for me, I'm a lot more comfortable with building now, and I've got a lot of practice under my belt. So coming up with different shapes and sizes is quite easy for me. But if I was back to being brand new, I'd definitely use pictures for inspiration, just to kind of give me an idea of shapes of houses and, you know, roof placement and things like that. So we're just going to build something quite straightforward really. I'm quite a symmetrical builder, so if I do a room that's 2 spaces in there, I'll do it 2 spaces on this side. I say I'm symmetrical, I'm not really, but I know what I mean. And we're just going to duplicate that room again. So we've just got a very bog standard shape. So the next thing to think about is roofing. We've got 4 different types of roofs that we can use, as well as different kind of turreted style roofs, as well as the diagonal roofs. With the diagonal roofs, you will only ever use them if you build on a diagonal. So for instance, if I built a room in this kind of direction, then I would have a roof that I would be able to place. Now I always find that gabled roofs are really friendly, really player friendly. You can literally use these in any ways that you like. And you can use one like this. This is just very simple roof. And then you can just simply turn one this way. Pull it in a little bit. And there we have it. We have a roof on a house. A lot of people ask me how you manipulate the roofs and how you change the shape of the roofs. So you'll see in some builds you have some really funky looking roofs. So that's all down to these little 2 dots here, which allow you to flex and manipulate the roof however you like. So you can have a very nice round dome shape, or you can make something just slightly curved, and it just adds that little bit of character. Now, something which many people aren't aware of is, and the only reason why people aren't aware of it is because absolutely nowhere do we have a guide on keybinds in The Sims 4. So it actually took me a while to figure this one out as well. But basically, if you select your roof, and if you watch these little dots here, if you type in Shift C, it will create 4 more on each side, little dots, which enable you to further manipulate the roof. Now, a lot of the time I get asked, how do I turn the very tips of my roof upwards? And what I do is I press Shift C, so we have all of these available, and I take the very bottom ones and I just flick it up. I literally lift it up and it creates this sort of flicked edge on the side of the roof. Now it's only a very small change, but it's one that adds a little bit more character to the roof. But these ones are really worth playing around with because you can come up with some very funky shapes. So we're going to go with this kind of flicked edge to the roof. So Shift C, and you'll need to do this independently for each roof that you use as well. That's the only downside, it doesn't activate them for them all. So with regards to each one of the roofs that you apply, you need to obviously reapply the Shift C to make the points appear. So what I might do is add a little chimney. Now I like to build chimneys quite a lot. You can do them in a couple of different ways. Normally you can do them 2 squares wide, and this will just create, and also what I normally do is do 2 spaces wide, and then you take the half wall, and here you've got different sized half walls, and I'll take this room tool here, which just allows me to do it again in a shape like that, as opposed to just going round one by one. So that's just a very simple chimney. Or you can complicate them a little bit more and create them where they are 4 spaces wide. You can take a half gabled roof, make it as small as it will go. Using these particular arrows, you can take in the very edges, move it onto the side, drag it upwards, normally take it to just below the next sort of level up, and then once you've done one side you can click on it, copy the item, rotate it round, and it will just duplicate it. And then again you can just take your half wall tool to create the very top. So it may be also worth me mentioning a couple of keys which come in quite handy as well. So for instance, we have the grid which is along the bottom. You can toggle this on and off using the letter G. Now I'm using an English keyboard. It may be different for you, but for me it's the letter G. You've also got H, which will select the hand tool up at the top. We've got the E dropper tool. Now the letter E on my keyboard will make this symbol appear next to it. Now to get rid of it, we can just press H and it will disappear and we're back on the hand tool. But when you press E, it allows you to duplicate an item. Now something else which is really handy is the Shift button. When you have hold of Shift and you also have your item, if you hold Shift when you place it, it will automatically duplicate another item. So this is very handy indeed, and also speeds up the building process. That can also come in handy when you're placing windows, especially when you're doing landscaping as well. Instead of having to just go scrolling back and constantly go back to your bar to pick another item, you can just hold Shift and it will literally duplicate the item. So that's a really good one to know. So another one that's worth mentioning is the Alt key. So a lot of the time I get asked how I place items exactly where I want that aren't on the grid. So you'll notice it is actually snapping along to the grid, and the only way that I can rotate them round is on these particular angles. And when I get rid of the grid, it makes no difference. It still acts as though it's on a grid. And that is by using the Alt key. So I have the item selected. If I hold Alt at the same time, press my left mouse button and swivel the mouse around, you will notice that I'm now able to move this wherever I like and rotate it however I want. So similarly, if I have hold of the item and I want to place it off the grid, say I wanted to move it right up to this wall, I could hold Alt and it will come off the grid, and I can place it really close to the wall. So I can create things to look a little bit more natural. So for instance, if I took a chair now and I wanted to put this chair on an angle, I'd hold Alt, which will allow me to place it wherever I like. And then once I've got it roughly where I like, I'll hold the left hand mouse button and swivel. Just like that. So the next thing we want to place is windows. So I'm going to be using the Seasons windows, and I'm going to show you something that I see fairly often within the Sims. So I'm just going to very quickly do something that I see a lot. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing your windows this way. But what I'm going to tell you is that when you place your windows like that, it doesn't really give for much of a different shape or different style to the house. It just looks very, very basic. So what I like to do, and this is why the Seasons windows are so good, is use lots and lots of different kind of shapes and sizes to change up the build and just make it a little bit more interesting to look at. So if, like me, you've got quite a lot of expansion packs and stuff packs, one of the really handy features is this filter items section. So it allows you to pick through certain colour swatches as well as styles, content and which packs. So I know the windows are coming from the Seasons pack, so I'm going to select that, and then it just keeps them at hand. Sometimes you have to reapply the filter as well, but it can just be a handy way to sort of get everything else out of the way so you can find things a little bit easier. So a lot of the time I like to use bigger windows at the bottom. And I like to also mix these windows up a little bit. So even though these are the individual styles that we have, and there are some really nice styles, you can actually mix them up together to create a different look. So for instance, I could use a bigger window there and then put some smaller ones either side. So I think we'll use these ones over here. And already you can see that it's just a little bit different. It adds a little bit more character, and I think it's more realistic as well. When you look at buildings ordinarily, sometimes they do use the same windows, other times they don't. It's a bit of a mixture, but it can certainly make it a lot more interesting to look at if you do kind of change them up. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a couple of windows around the outside. Now, something I see a lot is this. And this drives my OCD mad. Now, sometimes it can add a lot of character. It depends on the type of build that you're building. You may be doing a fantasy build and it looks absolutely fantastic. But for me, placing windows at the very, very edge, I just don't think it looks too good on the eye. So I always like to keep mine quite sort of, you know, with space a little bit similar to the door, a little bit of space either side. Also, you don't want to do too many windows that it kind of looks too much. It's got to be like a natural amount of windows. So I think for up here, I may do sort of 2 here and 2 here. And at the very bottom, just add some different ones in. So I'm going to duplicate my door using the letter E. And I'm just going to do the front exactly the same as the back. Now, normally when I get to the back of the house, I tend to replicate what I've done at the front around at the back as well. So I'm going to use my E tool again and situate this one here. As you can see, the filters have reset as well, which it can be, sometimes it can be handy, other times it, you know, not so much. So we'll use the bigger one at the bottom. Now, if you hold Alt as you're placing your window, it will allow you to place it wherever you like, basically across the entire wall. So you can change the height. I mean, you can just use the natural grid because that's not a bad thing to use either. And it also ensures that all of your windows all the way around are level. But when I place mine, I like to place them exactly where I want to put them. So I always hold Alt. So I'm going to use this set of windows around at the back again. And for the side here, I may use some of the bigger ones along the bottom and possibly a similar style at the top, so something like this. So I've got the bigger windows at the bottom and the smaller ones at the top. So here we have our very kind of basic house. Now the next thing I want to look at is the exterior trim. I always like to add a trim to my builds, and they come in an array of different colours as well. So if you click along here, you'll notice there's a little colour pattern, colour swatch here. If you click on it, it'll show you which colours in a more zoomed in version that you can use. So I think I might go ahead and use this particular style, which again is like the seasons trim, and then you just make sure that it's applied all the way around. So the next thing we need to think about is colour swatches for the house, and I get asked a lot how I come up with the colour swatches that I do. Now a really good way to do this is to take a temporary wall and build a temporary wall at the front, and you can just have a little play around with different colour combinations. So I might want to use, say, this stone, and I might want to use a very similar colour in brick. Now something I see very often is people use a solid block for their entire house. And again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it does actually work. It's, you know, depending on the style that you're building. This would look at the moment very, very British indeed, because we have a lot of brick houses. But it does help to sort of play around with different types of swatches, exterior swatches. So you might want to take a brick coloured one with a stone one. You may even want to add in some of the wooden ones. These are quite flexible as well. They come in a lot of different colours. So I'll show you how you can make this look a little bit more interesting. So for instance, say we colour the whole house stone. To make it more interesting, you can add different types of wallpapers. So I might decide for the top half of the house, I've found a colour here that complements this particular stone in this sort of creamy wooden kind of slat. It's clapboard crush, it's called. And again, I may want to add maybe like a stone wallpaper for the chimney, because a lot of the time they may be in a different colour. So I'm going to add like this sort of stone effect to the chimney. And already you can see a difference in the detail of the build. Now you can go even further and you can add separate swatches for the roof as well. One of the really nice ones actually, and I do use this one quite a lot, is in the Get Together expansion, and it's kind of like the Tudor inspired wallpapers. So down here we have quite an array of different ones. So you can take a colour that complements it and you could add it on. Just add it onto the very top half of the roof. And again, that gives just another dimension to the build and also another look to the build as well. So another handy shortcut which is worth noting is applying wallpapers. If you select the wallpaper you want to use and you hold Shift, it will apply the wallpaper to the entire block. So it's classed these two, because I built them separate, as two different blocks. So it's applied them in two different areas, but it just saves you time. It saves you from doing it kind of step by step. So again, another really handy one is to paint just one wall instead. So a lot of the time people may use this on the inside and they may be doing an accent wall. So say we do all this one colour and we just want to do this entire back wall one colour. So we select the wallpaper, hold Alt and click. And as you see, it's applied it to the whole of one wall. So these little shortcuts are actually really handy because they allow us to save time when we're building, and it can also, you know, a lot of the time help you to build much faster. So the next thing I want to look at is roof colours. So I like to kind of find a colour that will complement the outside of the house. I always find that we've got a lot of swatches in black, and these can be really, really handy because they tend to go with anything. But they do come in a lot of different styles as well. So if you were doing an old cottage, this one would be great. If you were doing a Spanish style villa, this one would be fantastic. So it's just about going through. As you can see, there's a lot of swatches. I don't think I've ever used this swatch, I must admit, but yeah, there's a lot of different ones. And obviously again, we have the selection of glass roofs over at the bottom there as well. So I'm just going to pick something I think I'm going to go with this one. And just find a colour that sort of complements the outside of the build. So once I'm happy with the way the roof looks and the exterior colours look, I then go ahead and use the roof trim. So these come again in lots of different shapes and sizes. As you can see when I apply it, this is the biggest one. I quite like this one, it's a big chunky one, but they come in a lot of different colours as well. So you can do them, you can just sort of play around really and just find one that you think looks really nice. So I might actually go with this one because I quite like the way this one looks. So something else you can do as well, if you go back into your exterior trims, is there's another selection down here. This is actually the trims. I think this is called freezes. I might be wrong. But I'm just calling them all trims. But down here is exterior trims as well. You can actually go ahead and pick a different colour to line the inside of the build, and sometimes I do this and it adds just a real nice subtle effect to the outside of the house. So I might do a grey because we've kind of got a bit of a grey theme going on, and these come in all different shapes and sizes, and they'll just layer over the top of the other ones as well, so it can just add a different effect. I'm happy with my house, but I'm not happy with where it's placed. So if I select this one at the top and I select move lot and use this little arrow key, it will then allow me to place it wherever I like. Now, for instance, if I had say I built an exterior garage at the side and I wanted to move the garage, but I didn't want to move the house, I was happy with where the house was. If you select all of it, it will move the entire lot. However, if when you go to the move lot and house, you select the top one, move house, or use the shortcut U, you can actually select individual rooms. So I could then move this over here, but we're just going to get rid of that. So I'm going to go ahead and move the house more kind of central, like so. So the next thing I like to look at is pillars. And in pillars, we have lots of different styles of pillars, from kind of old-fashioned ones, Victorian ones, modern ones. We've got an array of different ones. Now, one of my favourite ones to use is this one down here called Mega Column Basic. And I think this is actually base game. And I take it in around about the colour white, and I like to just frame just the very outside of the house all the way around. Ooh. We do actually have wallpapers that have this kind of effect on them, but they're not always great to use. They don't always work. Now you can go ahead as well and apply them to the next floor up. Now what you'll find if you have your grid off, if you can see here I'm trying to apply it to the very top, it's not working. But if I toggle G and make sure that the grid is on that particular floor that I want to place it in, so you can see it's there now. And now it appears, and I can then place the columns around on this floor. But I'm not actually going to add any on the next floor up. A lot of the time I just add them to the bottom. I think it looks like feet, like the house has got little feet. So I'm actually going to leave the tutorial here. I didn't actually realise this was going to be as long-winded as it is, and I do apologise for such a long video, but I did want to do something that was very much kind of like for a beginner and through to maybe advanced. So it's a lot more in depth, just talking through the process and the things that I do. But the next part we're going to cover sort of the decoration of the outside of the house and hopefully the landscaping, and you know, I can go through some more details on how I go about that process. But I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Please go easy on me, it's my first tutorial, and I hope it's been kind of informative and helpful in some way to some of you. I know for quite a lot of you, you may be quite advanced players and this was probably a complete waste of time. But yeah, I really hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please give me a big thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, it would be amazing to have you on board. If there's any questions that you have at all about building, anything that you'd like to know that I haven't covered in this first section of building, then please leave it in the comments section below and I'll make sure I answer your questions. So thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, bye.